Clint Webber.
Yes.
And you were my Rotary companion.
Yes.
Handshake,
Clint
please.
Webber.
And I just learned today for the first time, though I've known you a little while, that you grew up in Marfa.
Went to high school in Fort Davis, graduated from Sul Ross, and hung out in Marfa back in the 1970s. So I'm a local resident. I went to some schools here and in between Fort Davis and Marfa, an old student of the old Blue Mountain School.
What was that?
Back in the late 1970s, 1976 through.
Was that in Marfa?
It was in Fort Davis, Jeff Davis County.
Do you have any distinct memories of the place in the 70s? I'm guessing it wasn't like it is now.
Surprisingly, to me, it doesn't seem like it's changed that much, other than the fact that you can't go see a movie at the theater anymore. The movie theater was awesome.
Where was it? The Palace?
Yeah, right across from the Paisano.
Yeah, that's where David Kimball lives now.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And so why did...
I'll never forget when Cheech and Chong premiered there.
Oh, really? Tell me about it.
It was interesting. I think all the locals were definitely there that day.
But
from all over. Fort Davis, Alpine.
Was there a pot-smoking contingent out here in the 70s?
Well, that I don't know. I was underage. I was 16 years old when I went to school out here and joined the Naval Reserves at an early age. But graduated from Sul Ross and kind of I've owned property out here since 1980 and just spent my career out there making it in the world and spending time in the Navy and graduating from various universities and coming back home was my eventual goal.
How old were you when you left town?
Oh, I never really left. I joined the Navy Reserves and came back, and then for several years I was a Navy recruiter in Alpine and in the area and recruited high school students in the region, but because I've always owned property and could come back. But
so you've been here pretty continuously then in West Texas since the 70s?
I have a history here that long, but after spending a lot of graduating from school and going off to other universities and becoming a naval officer involved being away for quite a long
commander?
time. So
did I get that correct?
Yes. So I spent 19 years away and kind of intentionally didn't come back for several years unless I had to, because I loved the area so much that I knew that if I ever came back I would become disheartened with my career path and want to get back here, so I kind of stayed away for a while.
So I just want to reinforce what you're saying. So you left here for 16 years and you came back and you don't think it's that different?
No, well, because I'll tell you why. Because it's the reason we all love it. It's the reason we come back. We love the region, and my home has been an untouched time capsule since I left.
Which is your home? Where is it?
I have a home in Alpine that I bought in 1980.
Good price, I imagine.
Yeah, probably less than an automobile. Cost, yeah. I was lucky enough to realize that I was going to be coming back, so in 1980 I bought a home.
So when did Donald Judd and...
I knew Donald Judd. I'd met him and seen him.
Oh, you did? Tell me.
Well, we weren't friends, but he was the kind of person you could see. He actually went to the Art Students League of New York, where my great-great-aunt was one of the first administrators at the Art Students League in New York, Wilhelmina Weber Furlong. She was one of the first American modernists, in which Donald Judd was a postmodernist. And so he went to the same school that my great-aunt and great-uncle were instructors at. They were there from about 1910 to 1960. So Donald Judd was also a student of the postmodern art movement, and they were instructors or teachers at NYU and at the Art Students League. There's quite a history.
Did he know that connection with you?
At the time, no, because everybody knows Donald Judd, so it's just in passing, being a local, I would know him. And
yeah, not everyone does. And when I moved here, I knew Padres, and then a week later, I kind of liked the radio station. But it took me months before I even knew who Donald Judd was. So
really, yeah, being a local and involved in the arts for so long,
Okay, well, tell me about that. You're involved with the arts, but it wouldn't be my first guess. You spent 16 years in the Navy. Were you collecting art then?
Well, I have a collection of early modernist art, a museum collection, and we'll actually be displaying it at Building 98 sometime in 2012.
So what kind of stuff do you got, art-wise? What's going to be at Building 98?
Probably about 55 to 75 works of early modernism in America. Some of the early American artists who were key players in the movement. In New York, that would be Dorothy Daynor, John Graham, David Smith. And David Smith was a sculptor. These were the predecessors of Donald Judd, because Donald Judd is postmodernism, and I'm, of course, a modern 1900 to 19.
Did you pay attention to this stuff when you were in the Navy?
Oh, absolutely. I've been writing this history for over 30 years.
You've been writing a history? You buried the lead, man. What are you talking about?
Well, we haven't made the official announcement yet for the grand opening.
Scoop.
Yeah, it is.
Who's the we?
Mona.
Oh.
And at Building 98.
You know what? She told me about you a couple of years ago, long before I met you. She told me what you guys were doing.
Yeah, Mona has recently asked me to be a board member of Building 98, and I graciously accepted, but we have a really huge, earth-shattering project we're going to be involved with in 2012.
All right, well, you can keep us in suspense. It's not that kind of interrogation. But I'll tell you what I would like to know. The difference between Marfa in the 1970s and now, because there are two people that I've spoken to, and only two people, who said there really isn't much of a change. One is David Kimball, you know, the guy in the Palace. And absolutely. I said, David, said, you know, you've been here for 18 or 20 years. What do you think of all the changes? I said, well, I don't care how much. I really haven't noticed any changes in the town. And then you say...
that's fantastic.
Yeah, you're the only other person.
I jump for joy.
Well,
but she might scream.
You don't think there's a change in the influx of all these people, like her and myself?
Of course there's going to be some demographic changes. The people are still here. There's young people. There's old people. I wish I was still one of the young people, but I like to dance and have a good time too.
I'm very disturbed by the amount of hair on your head, and you call that a haircut versus the amount of hair on my head, and I'm trying to grow it long. So you cut a young image, my friend.
Yeah, well, when I grow my hair out long as a kid, when I lived out here, people used to think I was an Indian from Arizona or New Mexico.
How long's your family been in the area?
Well, I'm the first one from the family to come out here, and I came out here in 1976.
Well, you didn't grow up here?
Well, I was 16 years old when I came out here, and have been in love with it ever since. And from the time that I left to the time that I moved here and left, all I ever wanted in life was to get back to Marfa, Fort Davis, Alpine.
So I'm not sure I'm understanding. You were a kid in 1976, or not a kid, but I'm guessing you were
16 years old.
16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You came out here from where? Where'd you grow up?
I came out here from the public school system in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
So from, baby to teenageness, you were a Dallas guy?
No, I traveled. My father was a colonel in the Air Force, and my uncle was a two-star general in the Army. So we traveled a lot, but Dallas was what we like to call home. I was born in San Antonio, Texas, and traveled a lot as a kid. But during the 1970s, those were some interesting times, and my family didn't want me in a public school, so they used to fly me out here in little private airplanes to come to high school in Marfa, and pulled a few strings to get me into the school district, and of course bought some property so we could make it legal.
Right. And is that family property still here?
Well, I have it. Yeah.
Is that property still in the family? Should I say?
Yeah, it's my home, and
the one in Alpine.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to right during my high school graduation to have acquired a home, and of course I went to Sul Ross and had to have a place to live when I went to Sul Ross. And
so you're not of the opinion that like having a bunch of restaurants changed everything, or that like the Chinati
not at all.
organization?
There's not enough. The Chinati, granted, all that was still there before they got here. I mean, Marfa's had its history, and it's nice to know that some people are going to try their best to preserve what they can.
Yeah. Do you have any memories or stories about the military?
Oh, yeah, I do know some stories of a lot of people that I've known that lived here in Marfa. I mean, a lot of the little old ladies who since have passed away that tell me all these great stories about going to see the German soldiers that were out in the area.
Do you recall? Can you share any? Do you recall any?
No, just one in that the young girls at the time used to like to look at the blonde-headed Germans from the side of the highway.
Huh.
So I do.
I wasn't alive then, but I've heard Nazis were not very popular due to their ideology, among other things. And yet, you're saying that there was...
I don't think they were unpopular here because we are such a remote region, and they did so much. You know, they were well respected by the military establishment because they were all officers. So
yeah,
I know if you wanted to talk to someone who knows a lot about that history, talk to Mona.
Right, but even Mona doesn't remember it. I would love to find out. You know who I talked to who does actually remember that a little bit is Cecilia Thompson. Do you know her?
Yes.
She's about 90 years old.
Well, I did have an uncle who was a two-star general in the cavalry. In World War II, he was a two-star general, and he was the commandant at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio right after World War II up through the 1960s and 70s. So I know as a cavalry officer, he got here to Marfa, or Camp Marfa, but I used to sit under his desk as a kid and play General Willie. But no, that was interesting. But no, I don't have a direct connection for military.
Do you have friends here that you were friends with as a kid? As a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old, 18-year-old?
Oh yeah, I frequently see lots of people that I've known as a kid here and went to school with, and a lot of people are still here, the locals, and other people who were here and came back. And
Give me a name of a couple childhood friends that you have.
well, I don't know say they were childhood, but college friends. Of course, I knew Allison Scott.
Oh yeah, sure.
Allison Ryan. I went to school with her at Sulross. And,
Minerva.
Yeah, and her sisters, and so there's and of course one of the flamenco dancers that we brought in from El Paso. We just did a show at Building 98 with Tracy Ryder from the Cathedral Mountain, the Brown Ranch, and that was an interesting family.
Let me jump to something I don't want to forget. You were talking to us at the Rotary Club today, and Chuck gave your resume. But he mentioned two things. You went to MIT, is that right?
Sloan, yeah. I was in New England for quite a few years, so I was fortunate to go to some really good schools. I was in Los Angeles class submarines and stationed at General Dynamics Electric Boat.
But it wasn't just good fortune. Obviously, you had to qualify to go. I mean, not everyone who wants to can attend.
Yeah, I was able, as a graduate student, because when I left the reserves to go on full-time active duty as a college graduate, I spent several being initially enlisted and then accepting officer candidacy training. I was and participated in many university programs that were through the federal government. And,
did I hear correctly that you were in Desert Storm?
Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and as a reservist, I spent time in Grenada and seen tour of duty and the Sudan, Afghanistan, Iraq.
And did I also hear correctly that you yourself were a POW briefly?
Yes. Fortunately, back in those days, they weren't cutting off heads, but
right. But
that's
still, it must have been a
difficult political situation these days, and hopefully we won't stir up any trouble these days. It's just sad.
Agreed.
The way it is now,
on a personal
different world.
On a personal basis, though, when I think of an American POW, I think of someone. I mean, do you not see that as a monumentally heroic part to play in the country's history? I guess you seem incredibly mild-mannered about it with the Rotary Club, and
I'm
even
thankful.
here.
I'm thankful to be alive.
How long were you held?
About 27 months.
Holy shit!
Careful. Well, anyway, I pray the Rosary. I'm a spiritual man, but I'm also somewhat. That's probably why when you've been through, the more you go through in life, the more little things that you experience from day to day that might set someone off. Generally, you can shrug things off. You don't get stressed out. I mean, it's not life-threatening.
But what you're saying is not a given, because I could imagine that someone who you were in Iraq at this time, those 27 months, is that right?
Iraq?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I could imagine that someone who had that precisely the same experience would be amazingly stressed out.
Well, I got over it. Initially, I thought I would be. I don't have any problems or psychological issues, but I've
far from it.
I've
the outside
always. Well, I sought refuge in the Rosary and the Franciscan Order. When I got out of, I sought prayer and thought I would. I actually spent time as a Franciscan in training in Third Order. And
in training to become
novitiate.
a monk or a clergy? Or?
Well, I lived it with the Franciscan community.
Where?
In Boston, Massachusetts.
For how long?
About a year and a half.
And was that as a kind of a method of decompression from your experience?
I wanted to pursue it as a full-time career.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't raised Catholic. I was raised Episcopalian, so there's differences there. I was able to find great spiritual healing and solace in knowing that there are powers that can change your life, and basically my life was changed through the difficult periods of time by praying the Rosary. That's one finds it a lot of peace in prayer.
To have been a prisoner in Iraq for 27 months means you must have been one of the initial human shields.
Absolutely, yeah. A lot of that, I've had a variety of NATO and United Nations work, and special forces and consulting, and as a weapons specialist, as you want to call it, certain areas. There's certain things I can't talk about.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Confidentiality agreements.
I want to just kind of introduce you since I know you a little bit and I'm looking at you. You are an incredibly mild-mannered guy. You laugh a lot and you laugh fairly easily. And so when we heard this today, it's the definition of the word counterintuitive. If I had to look around the table for the guy who had been in the military for 16 years and
21 actually, but I spent two terms. Yeah, I was enlisted, joined the reserves, and I went on from the active reserve to full-time active duty. So between a long span of time, I spent 21 years serving the military, but that was probably even longer than that.
But certainly the 27 months in captivity must have, that's a different degree of serving the country than merely being in the military. And I shouldn't say merely being in the military, but in comparison with being captive. I mean, that's the highest order.
Hostage, whatever, yeah. I'm humble. I don't look at, I think there's not a day go by that you don't think about certain things.
Yeah, I understand.
And things that happen to you, and fortunately, most of them weren't very pleasant. Deathly ill at times, and suffered a lot. Mm-hmm. But in suffering, we gain insight into our human nature, and you come to accept things.
That is not always true. I have to remind you of the truth, because you're saying this so modestly. In suffering, you gained insight into human nature and to your own psyche or psychology, but I'm not convinced that all of us do.
Well, I pray. I'm a religious man.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily live the perfect quote.
No, well, show me who does.
Yeah,
but anyway, I get.
I have
a
personal conviction and a deep belief in what kept me from going insane. But, it happens. I think you call it Gulf War syndrome. Happened a lot in World War II. Happened worse in World War I. But I've been lucky.
Has it changed the way you think about the United States and the United States' relationship with the world, or are you relatively apolitical as well?
Well, yeah, I've worked for 5 presidential administrations. Yeah. If you count the time when I went, with Ronald Reagan, back in, as a young man enlisting, I've always wanted to fight for the American cause. I believe in freedom and democracy, and I'm proud to be an American soldier, and I've volunteered and think that a lot of people over the years have thanked me as a Navy recruiter within this region back in a long time ago. And in Alpine that I've helped shape the lives of people and help them get their educations. And serving in the military is one of the greatest things someone can do for their country.
Yeah, well, I greatly appreciate it, and especially today we were out putting up flags.
I saw them and drove around looking at them before I came over here.
And so it kind of comes full circle to be talking to you about this now. Let me bring it back to Marfa a little bit. So Marfa is portrayed kind of accurately as a very liberal spot in a very conservative area. West Texas is probably pretty conservative. Marfa's pretty liberal. I'm guessing you're fairly conservative.
Well, and that's where something that I don't see it. Yeah, there are some liberal people here. Yeah, there are conservative people here. To me, that would more indicate that because of the balance between the two, that we're right in the middle where we should be.
There you go. Well, let's stick with that. Let's get back to Donald Judd. Do you remember a time when there weren't any boxes? Those,
Yes.
You do. Okay.
Yeah.
And do you remember someone with a hammer or whatever? I'm making a caricature of it, but do you remember when those things were being constructed?
No, because I remember more when he first moved here. And so, and the tie with me is not so much remembering what went on with Donald Judd, but is in having an aunt and an uncle who were his teachers in art school.
Yeah.
At not necessarily they were teachers at the art school. Excuse me. His big significance with Donald Judd is the school that he went to. He went at that time was one of the most prestigious art schools in the country, the Art Students League of New York. It was originally founded in the late 1860s, if not sooner than that. It was probably might have even been prior to the Civil War. So it's very prestigious education to say that you were from the Art Students.
With this art pedigree that you have in your family, are you an artist? Do you draw or paint or anything like that? Sculpt?
No.
Could you?
I've tried a little bit, but mostly I'm a collector and have an exhibition that's going to be traveling the museums of the country here in 2012.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll probably interview you again in 2012. So you don't need to show all your cards right now, because I've heard Mona talking about this thing too. We have a few minutes left. I wanted to ask you about the Rotary Club, because for me, I've been part of the Rotary Club since I got here, but for me, the Rotary Club was something I associate with Marfa. I'd never even heard of a Rotary Club before. What is it for you? Is it something new for you?
Absolutely. The idea of clubs and organizations is not new, but the Rotary Club is one that I've never been a member of before, and we've all seen their logo, and we all know, hey, there's a Rotary Club, but this is the first time I've ever participated in a Rotary.
I'll tell you something really...
Or as a Rotarian.
This is very funny, but I used to think that symbol meant Scientology, because L. Ron Hubbard was supposed to be like a ship's captain, and that was like...
I think I remember you saying that.
Yeah, so anyway...
Now that is a bizarre philosophy there. I don't know if we can go into that.
No, we'll do that after a few more drinks. What's your favorite Padres drink?
Well, I'm not prone to be a drinking man. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty much Coca-Cola, but occasionally I will have a glass of wine or a mixed drink. But I love to dance. I'm a dancing fool, so I like to get on the dance floor and kick up a little sawdust every now and then, and maybe have a Jack Daniels or whatever.
Where did you dance in Marfa in the 80s?
The only place to dance now is Padres. In Marfa, it was more or less a lot of Spanish. I love Spanish dancing. Uh-huh. A lot of people went to Alpine, and there was kind of a rivalry between Alpine and Marfa. But Padres reminds me a lot of some of the old places that we used to go to in the back. I mean, in Alpine, it was the cross country. Yeah. There were lots of various places, but that's why, to me, it hadn't changed, because there's always been a place like this, if not this place, but a place where you can sit outside and sing Amazing Grace till 2 in the morning with all your buddies at the bar. That's something that we actually used to do with the locals here.
Huh.
Allison's sister.
Amazing Grace, like as a religious song, or is
we'd sing anything we want.
Are you allowed to? Well, hold on. Let me specify. Are you allowed to drink and sing Amazing Grace?
Well, you can do anything you want if it makes you feel good.
Okay.
That's just a group of kids, young people, out in the back of a place like Padres, drinking their beer, having a good good time, and singing their songs.
Clint, I'll tell you what, let's end there. You're a really fantastic guy. Thanks so much.
Okay.
I appreciate it.